So, Apple has released updates to the iPhone's iOS, the Mac's macOS, and the iPad's iPadOS, and other things. Normally, what happens, right, is that shiny new versions of these things they're announced in June, and then they all come out for us to play in September, and then for about the next year, Apple brings out things, just like fixes them and stuff. Sometimes, okay, there is a bit more to it, like the odd delayed features that come around too. But usually by now, as this is being recorded in April, if there were going to be anything good in these updates, well, Apple would just kind of hold them back to the next big June announcement. But not so much this year, not quite so much. This time, this week's new iOS 18.4 does bring some nice new features, and especially if you're in Europe, and macOS 15.4 brings, well, it's fine. Hello, I'm William Gallagher, and this is 58 Keys, which, as ever, as always, is for writers like you and me who use and who write on Macs and iPhones and iPads. Do subscribe or like or support 58 Keys on Patreon, because there's always so much to talk about, and today, specifically, talking about operating systems. Funny things, if you know what an OS is already, well then I'm going to sound like I'm mansplaining here, but it's that supremely obvious. It's one of those things, OS, an operating system, if you don't happen to know, then nobody seems to tell you about it, so I don't see, you can get why it's significant, okay? But it is. The operating system, the OS, it's the software that lets you run apps at all, that even shows you things on the screen, that recognises actually when you've tapped or clicked or possibly sworn at your devices, which means any change to the operating system, it's like it touches every part of your iPhone or your iPad or your Mac and whatever it is. And it also affects every app, every feature, every function, all of it is affected by the new OS, which is why you must never update your device's OS right away, as soon as you've heard that it's out, as soon as your device has said, hello, update me. Even with all the testing Apple or anybody, any company does, once an update like this is out in the public, it is now in the hands of 2 billion people, and they are going to find problems. So give it a few days, let people find problems, let Apple fix them, more importantly, and then install them. Once this little time has gone by, you do need to update, and I do mean need, because another part of an OS is that it has security features to protect you and your data, your work, your documents, your writing. But apart from security updates you need, but will possibly never even notice, there are always performance improvements that you might also not notice, bug fixes that might not affect you. But then finally, there can be new features. This time out, there are several new features for the iPhone, features that you will use. The biggest difference that iOS 18.4 brings is one that really only affects people in the European Union, and it's one that even there you might not be that fussed about yet. Apple Intelligence. Apple Intelligence makes its EU debut in iOS 18.4. Well, actually, it's coming to localized in 8 languages around the world. It's been updated to be localized for several more languages, but EU users are seeing it for the first time in any form. So you now get Apple Intelligence's writing tools, which are okay to play with, I suppose, but you're a writer, I'm a writer, and most of them are no use to us at all. Although there is actually a proofreading option in Apple Intelligence Writing Tools proofreading. And I do have a friend who's ditched his Grammarly subscription because Apple Intelligence's tools are better, he says. You also get Image Playground, which is a thing. Have a go, asking it to draw you 3 clowns holding a horse. Yep, why not? And yeah, good luck getting anything useful from it, or even 3 clowns. Though actually, as of now, iOS 18.4, you get a new sketch tool in Image Playground as well. So, okay. But here is what is actually good. If you have any model of iPhone 16 except the newest iPhone 16e, you've already had visual intelligence for a couple of months. I mean, again, unless you're in the EU. It's now spread to more types of iPhone, And it's done so in a way that might actually be pretty handy for you, even if you do have an iPhone 16 model. If you haven't used it, right, I should say this first because you're wondering what's the point. Visual intelligence, it's this thing where you can point your iPhone's camera at something, anything really, press a button and it will tell you all about that thing. So I've used it to identify plants, I've used it to recognize buildings, and actually this one amazes me. If you point it at an event poster, it will grab all of the details and add them to your calendar. It's just crazily useful. Not very often, but when it is, great. Also, if you want to buy whatever it is you're pointing at, it will tell you that too. I've kind of had mixed results with that bit. There's a camera thing I wanted, like a little extra I needed a replacement for, and I couldn't think of the name, nor could it. But it did ID some really nice lamps at a restaurant I was in, and it directed me to the right shop to buy those. I haven't done it yet, but I can. But anyway, it used to be you only had this excellent feature if you had an iPhone with a camera control button, this thing on the side. And that's only the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, iPhone 16 Pro, iPhone 16 Pro Max. As of iOS 18.4, you don't need this button because visual intelligence is now available to you through three other ways actually. Maybe the best, you can add it to Control Center. So you can just swipe down to get Control Center. The first time you do it, you need to add a new control, and then that means searching for visual intelligence, but then you pop it anywhere you want on the screen and it's always available. Or in a similar way, you can put it on a lock screen. And you can add visual intelligence to the buttons at the bottom. You can change these now. Or if your iPhone has an action button, that's another one, you can now use that. Start up visual intelligence. The action button is on every iPhone 16, including the new iPhone 16e Plus. It's on the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max. So, visual intelligence via the action button has spread from 4 iPhones to 7. And it's kind of the same for the Control Center option. All of the phones that can have it, have it. What this means is if your iPhone does not have a camera control button, you may still be able to use visual intelligence. Can your phone run Apple Intelligence? I do have a camera control button, so I have that, but I still have the option to use this now through the action button or through Control Center or through the lock screen. So that's very nice for me. I think I'm now used to the camera control button, so maybe I'll stick with that. But I use Control Center a lot, so swiping down for Control Center could be handier. And actually, once I finally decide what I want to use a lot on my lock screen, I think now it could well be visual intelligence. Now we have the option to put it there. I do use the action button, but that's the problem there, really. I actually use it. At the moment, you can set the action button to launch visual intelligence, but if you do, it will only launch visual intelligence. Whereas I have my action button set to launch a shortcut, which offers me a few different options I use quite often. You can't add visual intelligence to a shortcut like that. Not today, anyway. Another good thing in Apple Intelligence that you and I now get as of iOS 18.4, priority notifications. It's based on whether the notification mentions a time or a place, or it just sounds really strident. Well, your iPhone's going to surface that. It will show you that notification, even if you have dozens of others that have come in since. It works well. Well, it works. And then there's this. If you have Apple News Plus, then from iOS 18.4, you also get a new and extremely extensive, extremely well done food section. If you do not have Apple News Plus, well, then you don't get that. But apparently you do get at least some of the recipes and the food-related articles. I don't know yet how much you get. I just know, maybe it's only enough, just a sliver, to tempt you into signing up for Apple News Plus. That seems likely, doesn't it? But I don't know because I have Apple News Plus already. I think I would have it anyway, because, all right, at the moment, what things in the world. I'm kind of hiding away from news a bit, but when I'm not, it's been an excellent news source. It's a great place for magazines and stuff. But I also have Apple News Plus because it comes bundled with the Apple One collection. Apple One gets me things like Family Apple Music, more iCloud storage, Apple News Plus, Apple TV Plus, in one fee. So, right, because I'm not clear how much will be shown to you without a News Plus subscription, sorry, but I am clear that when you do have it, the recipes are really well done. I mean, the way you find them is fine. There's so many, it's difficult to search things, but it's okay. But when you're in your kitchen cooking from one, it's excellent. The recipe instructions are shown in like a really particularly well done, large, clear font that actually you'll recognize if you've ever looked up the lyrics of something in Apple Music. It's as well displayed as that. I did just recently move back to the Paprika recipe app, and I am still using that, but I've held off buying the Mac version. I'm sticking to the iPad and the iPhone that I've already got while I look further into this Apple News Plus food section. It is that good. A couple of things about it though. On the good side, this new food section appears to be available wherever Apple News Plus is. I've got it here in the UK where, for instance, I still do not have any of the News Plus puzzles, the Sudoku and the crossword stuff that have been available to US users for a couple of years at least by now. I mean, there may well be places that the food isn't available, but at least it's got a wider reach than the puzzles. That reach, though, doesn't appear to extend to the Mac. I mean, maybe it's just me, but on my Mac, I do not have the new food section, even in Apple News Plus. I can search for food. That sounds like I'm hungry. And I can get plenty of results, including recipes, including articles, but not the full new food section. It is possible, though. Don't listen to me on this because it's possible. It's just my system. I've got multiple Apple accounts and I do get confused over which has a subscription to what on which device. But speaking of the Mac, as of the new macOS 15.4, Apple Mail for the Mac has added mail categorization. So instead of like just a single inbox of everything in the order it came in, Apple Mail will now sort your emails into different categories, specifically transactions, so Amazon stuff you've bought, updates, promotions, and what it calls primary. Primary is really everything that isn't anything else. Mail categorization, it's fun. After months of using this across the iPhone and the iPad, and now a few weeks on the Mac, I haven't found a single email go into the wrong category. If it did, though, you could say, "Oi, Mac, no," and then you could move it. You can drag it to the right category, and a chastened macOS will forever remember that that's what it's supposed to do with that email, with that type of email. I've thought before that all of this was a shrug. Really? I mean, I've definitely thought Gmail's had it for years, and I didn't particularly want it in Gmail. It just, now that I have been using it for a while, no, I think I'm still shrugging a bit. I'd like there to be more options, for example, with what emails or which email accounts, inboxes, get the unread count, the red badge number. Because at the moment, that always seems to be showing me what seems to be the wrong thing, or what I don't think it should be. But I haven't been bothered enough to switch it off. I haven't switched off mail categorization on the Mac or the iPhone, and you can. Actually, this is something where Apple's quite good about this. It's really clear right from the start that this new categorization feature is on. So I think that's Apple practically boasting, look at this stuff. But in that, it also shows you how to turn it off if you don't want it. Speaking of switching things off, though, this is Mac and iPhone. You can also entirely switch off Apple Intelligence, and you might want to, even if you're in the EU and it's so new to you that you're still trying to get Image Playground to do something good. Yeah, you might still want to switch it off. Right now, Apple Intelligence, it doesn't offer a lot. I think what it does, most of it's good, but not a lot, and yet it does take up a huge amount of storage space on your device. Turn it off and you instantly get back several gigabytes of space. And if you're tight on space, that could be crucial. But again, right now, that space might be more used to than Apple Intelligence, because it's not that I'm dissing Apple Intelligence, it's the balance for it. And it's still early days, isn't it, for Apple Intelligence? There isn't a lot there yet. If you do turn it off there and you're thinking, well, does this mean I'll never notice when anything good comes? You'll never remember to turn it back? Well, yeah, don't worry about that. Don't give it a thought. Because very kindly, every time you update your iPhone, iPad or Mac, Apple is going to turn that thing back on. Apple knows best. I am leaving it on, actually, mostly because now, and actually increasingly so over time, Apple Intelligence is going to be less this separate feature and more deeply part of iOS and macOS. Is visual intelligence, does that stay when you switch it off? No. Priority notifications, does that? I don't think so. Inbox summaries, I like those as well. I like website highlights. I've finally been showing them in Safari occasionally, and I like them when I see them, and I do really, really like that visual intelligence. So I'm leaving it on. One last thing for the new macOS 15.4 specifically. I just switched to a new Mac Studio a couple of weeks ago, and it's a marvellous device. I'm impoverished, but it's marvellous. But even now, a couple of weeks in, I am still finding settings and apps and features that I didn't realise I'd set up and relied on my old Mac Mini that I now have to keep resetting up on the new one. I mean, dozens of these things. It's eye-opening, eye-watering sometimes, especially with the security notifications. But with the new macOS 15.4, some of the chore of moving to a new Mac will now be easier. Just as with an iPad, for instance, where you could hold your iPhone near it and the iPad would pick up things like your Apple ID, your Apple account, and your Wi-Fi network and things like that. Well, now, as of macOS 15.4, you can do the same with the Mac. Two Macs, both are like in dignity, and by that I mean both running macOS 15.4, now let you at least start to migrate from the old to the new machine more easily. It's come too late for me and the Mac Studio, and yeah, that Mac Studio is very... I'd best not plan to buy another new Mac for a very long time, but it might help you. I think it will. But otherwise, let me just say that that's it for this edition of 58 Keys with the new updates. Thank you very much for watching. Don't install the updates too soon, but do install them shortly. And while you try to work out there what comes between not too soon and too shortly, take care of yourself. Hey, write more, and I'll see you soon.